And we're back with Fiona Devine. So slightly more recent sociologist than the likes of Marx and Weber, but still not too new. I mean, to be fair, none of the case studies are really all that new, unfortunately. But anyway, so Devine is a slightly different one. So not a massive sort of social theorist like Davison Moore or Marx or Weber. Slightly more sort of low key conclusions drawn from this one. But the thing that really confuses people about Devine is the fact that actually her study is based on another study. So she's doing like a follow up to a study by a sociologist called Lockwood. Now, Lockwood basically did a study that found that the work, well, he predicted at least that the working class, who are typically quite communal people, sort of very community based, he predicted that they were going to become more privatized. Okay, and he described this as privatized instrumentalism, as you can see just here. So he said that this would become quite typical amongst the working class. Um, so what this really means is that basically social relationships centered on the home, with work only becoming a means to an end. So basically, they work so that they can fund their family life. Okay, whereas traditionally the working class are seen as a community of people who well, not only enjoy their work but take pride in it, and also allow it to become quite integrated with their family life. So they'll be friends with their work friends, sort of have them around for dinner, and like sort of like have that sort of positive relationship with their workplace. But what Lockwood said, that was sort of dissipating, that was becoming less apparent. um, and actually they were just going to work, not making friends, and sort of quickly after work making their money, going home, and sort of becoming very centered in their home life. So when affluent workers joined their workmates, Lockwood believed they did so as self-interested individuals to improve their wages and working conditions, rather than as an act of collective solidarity. Can't get my words out today. So again, exactly what we've just said. Okay, so if they were to meet up with their workmates, it wouldn't be because they want to. It would be so that they can sort of get one up on maybe their other workmates. They might sort of be looking to get a wage increase or sort of make a good relationship, but it wouldn't be genuine. It would just be so that they can get ahead. Um, so it's actually quite a sort of cynical view of the working class that Lockwood put forward. The idea that they're actually becoming more self-interested, more, dare I say, like the middle and upper class. Okay, so the theory's not come from nowhere, but all the same, Devine, going back to the actual case study, wanted to test this. Okay, she wanted to test whether Lockwood was right, whether the working class had changed their culture surrounding work and family life. And so during the late 1980s, Devine interviewed a small sample of male manual workers employed at the Vauxhall car plant in Luton, so actually not too far from here, and their wives. By returning to Luton, she was able to make a direct comparison with the work of Goldthorpe and Lockwood in the 1960s. So if it didn't mention it at the start, but Lockwood's theory was based on research that was done in the same place in Luton. She did not find evidence to support the idea of privatized instrumentalism. Whilst the lifestyle of her sample was not as communal as that of the traditional working class back in the sort of 50s and 40s, um, neither was it home centered and privatized as has been predicted. So basically, what she's saying is Lockwood was wrong. Okay, they're not quite as communal as they used to be, but they're not private, insular, sort of just staying in their homes, and that's not the case. Okay, at least it wasn't in the 1980s when she did this study. She also rejected the idea of the new working class and denied that affluent workers had been persuaded to accept capitalism uncritically. So, part of Lockwood's idea was actually that the working class are becoming more like the middle class, inevitably. They basically are starting to accept capitalism and sort of ignore inequality and just seek success for themselves. Devine says that's not the case. Okay, they are still critical of capitalism. They still see inequality as something terrible. Let's keep going. So, amongst her sample, she found evidence of rising living standards and of aspirations as consumers. So that's in line with what Goldthorpe and Lockwood said. But many of those she interviewed continued to resent the privileges of inherited wealth and held a sense of injustice at the existence of extreme class inequalities. That's still very traditional working class. Okay, because remember, working class are sort of at the bottom, or at least near the bottom of the social scale in terms of wealth. And so Lockwood said that they would eventually grow to not necessarily resent that, but actually be encouraged to try and sort of accumulate wealth and become part of that system. Okay, so inevitably, Devine interviewed these people and found, well, Lockwood was wrong. Okay, they still resent that. However, whilst they retained many of the values of the traditional working class, her respondents had generally lost faith in the ability of the Labour Party to deliver a more just and equal society. That's an interesting difference. So basically, Devine's study is obviously recapping Lockwood's study, and basically trying to figure out, is privatized instrumentalism actually happening? And the overarching message is no, it's not. The working class are still fairly collective, whilst maybe a little bit more home-centered. They are still critical of sort of inequalities and sort of wealth disparities between the middle and working class. But the one thing that had changed was their loyalty to the Labour Party. So for those of you who don't know, the way voting usually goes, well, at least it used to usually go, if you were working class, you voted Labour because they had your interests in their minds. Okay, so Labour Party is traditionally seen as the working class party, sort of the party of the working man. I think they pitched themselves as, whereas the Conservative Party is more for sort of the middle class in traditional politics. Okay, but actually, Devine found that they had lost faith in the Labour Party and were moving towards other parties. Not necessarily the Conservatives, but other parties. So maybe like the Liberal Democrats and the Green Party and things like that. So that's one difference that had been noted. Now, how you might use this in an essay or a question, I've generally seen Devine in smaller questions, so 3 and 4 markers. Now, if you got a question on it was going to be to do with class. Okay, if there's an argument about class relationships in the stratification unit, then you might use Devine. Okay, but I will say she's one of the lesser used case studies in that sense, but still very much worth revising. Because actually, if you really look at it, it's not that difficult of a theory. She tested one thing and found it's not true. This idea of privatized instrumentalism. That's basically it. There is finer detail, but on the face of it, that's all you really need to realize. Okay, so that's Devine. I'm going to move on now and going to do Townsend next. So I will see you in the next video. Thank you very much.